as a food scientist, the food is produced in food chain. If agronomists, if externals, the agricultural external people are silent, then we are not going to make it work. We have environmentalists. By the way, when it comes to environment, there's a very, very big problem in the environment. The soil is polluted, the water is polluted, and the air is polluted. Now, when you grow food in a polluted environment, then you not have a safe food to eat. So let all scientists come together and voice the concerns about food safety. Let's petition the government. Let's even come together and say our environment is bad for our food safety. Our water is not good. Our air is polluted. When we have this voice, then the government will say, there's something here that's happening. Then they'll mitigate about it. But the silence of scientists is really worrying this country. And I wish people would come out, people who are learned about it, the professionals in nutrition, food science, medical experts, and environmentalists, farmers. If we come together and voice that there's a concern on food safety, then I think we can move on as.
Are you wondering how you can learn more about food? Well, you're in the right place. This is the Chakula Podcast, brought to you by the Root to Food Initiative, a show that celebrates authentic Kenyan dishes and serves you hot conversations about food in Kenya from an economic, social, and political lens. Sema nasi kwenye social media at Root to Food on Instagram, at Root to Food on Twitter, and Root to Food on Facebook. And now, here's your host, Felistas Mwalia.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Chakula Podcast. I'm your host, Felistas Mwalia, a member of the Root to Food Alliance and also a project officer for the Root to Food Initiative, which is a program under Heinrich Ball Foundation, Nairobi office. Safe food for all Kenyans is enshrined in the Kenyan Constitution 2010. However, food safety is one of the fastest rising concerns, not only in Kenya, but globally. Today, I'll be hosting a very interesting individual who has done a lot of work on food safety. He's a food scientist and a food science expert running a company called Fit and Healthy Citizen for Food and Wellness Consultancy Training and Advocacy Firm. Also to mention, he has also been very, very active championing for food safety online. Karibu sana to the show, Dennis Ouma Otieno.
Welcome, Madam Felistas, and I'm happy to be at the studios here. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to finally meet you, and I hope the conversation will be very interesting for our listeners. To start us off, the conversation on food safety didn't start today, and it didn't start like last year. But from what I've observed is that after the expose by NTV, that's when I started seeing most Kenyans really agitating and basically most Kenyans really talking so much about food safety. From your own perspective and from what you've been doing, and since you've been in this field for so long, do you think the conversation started in 2019 after the expose, or the conversation has been there? And why have people now taken this up issue?
What has been happening is that the conversation has been ongoing in Kenya, only that after the red alert by NTV, that's when it was now to taken to another level. But Kenyans are becoming more vigilant with what they eat because they know that we are what we eat. And actually, if you can see, the emergence of lifestyle diseases in Kenya has been a very, very big problem. And the people who are concerned, the people in cities, in towns, they are saying that there's something wrong with the type of food that we eat. So in most cases, they have been asking, but it has not been that big. And actually, the exposure that you see and the organizations that are coming around, that has made it now to be known. But Kenyans have been concerned with the type of food they eat. Like if you look at the lifestyle diseases, as food scientists, we know very, very well that food is the biggest contributor to lifestyle diseases. Such that if you don't eat well, if you go to the type of diet that you are consuming nowadays, then there's a big problem. So when people go to hospitals, then they are told you have to change your diet. Then they ask themselves, what have I been eating? Then when they see on TV that there's something wrong with what they eat, then they become alert and they start to inquire, what is this that we are eating that we should do? What should change? So the exposure had really exposed some part of it, but in essence, Kenyans have been alert and aware that there's something wrong with the food. They look into it, maybe they start questioning themselves, what component of food is bad for us? Is it the chemicals? Is it the physical chemicals or the physical hazards, the chemical hazards or the biological hazards? So Kenyans have been enlightened on this and they want to know what they are really consuming.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I really like what you've said about chemical hazards or biological hazards. That takes us to the next question, whereby you can share with us what are the main food safety issues and entry points for food safety hazards in the country.
There are so many, actually. When you look at, let's go back when you are still young. When we were still young, the way we were growing our food, we used to have the manure, the organic manure. But nowadays, we use the chemical. So we have the chemicals entry, then we have the biological, then we have the physical. Now the chemical part is now one of the biggest ones. When people use the chemicals that are used for growing food, actually look at the food chain. When you start growing food, the food has to be safe until the time it is eaten from the farm to fork. So when it is not safe, then we start questioning ourselves, where did it start? When the media exposes that there's something wrong with the food that we are eating, now you start asking, did farmers practice due diligence? Did the people who are transporting it, did the food manufacturers, actually the food manufacturers have a very, very big impact or input on the type of food that we eat. So the chemicals that are there, then the toxic environment, of course. When you produce food in a toxic environment, like me as a food scientist personally, I believe, in Nairobi, the soil, air, and water is polluted. And I don't think if you are to be serious in this country, you should not be producing food.
Just as a continuation, Dr. You mentioned a few food safety issues from how food is grown, but you're also continuing to share more, and you are very concerned on basically how people grow food in the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in most cases, the main issue in food safety is the chemical that used to grow foods, that there is farming practices. Maybe there are pesticides that are they are almost carcinogenic to our system and they have been banned in other countries. Then another area is the toxic environment. Just like I've said, there are some parts of our city, maybe Nairobi, that are not good for the growth of healthy food, partly because they use the sewage water that's running, or the soil is polluted. Soil is polluted, water is polluted, and even the air, because you know that the vegetables that we grow, they tend to use that air, and some of it can be in the food really. So in some parts of our country, especially some parts of the city, we're not supposed to grow some food for the safety of our citizens. Then emergence of industrially processed foods. We know that lifestyle diseases are caused by the highly processed foods. As food scientists, I know that we have shifted from how we used to eat when we were young, or traditionally. We used to eat whole foods, more fruits and vegetables, whole grains and everything. But now we are going to the route of highly refined foods, where you find that all the fiber are taken out, the roughages, and you know this, the fiber and roughages are the ones that control the digestion and everything. They make your digestion to slow down so that you are able to digest it in a better way. And in most cases, when you have the highly refined foods, then you have the emergence of lifestyle diseases. So that is a safety issue that's also coming there. And of course, the food handling. When you go to the streets, then as a food scientist, I'm really worried on the type of food that we eat, because the food handlers, they are not keeping the hygiene. You eat something and you can have a food poisoning. Or food intoxication. So food handling is becoming a major issue in our country, and it's a big issue when people eat and they don't consider the safety around them. So that is a very, very big issue that's coming on food safety around us.
Yeah, actually that's very interesting, the fact that you've mentioned about food handling and especially street food. And just as an observation, or from what we've been doing, most Kenyans, the food that most Kenyans can really afford is food from the streets. So when it comes to food safety, the government has a lot really to do.
The government has a lot to do. And it all starts with the individual. I mean, you are brought up to eat healthy food. If you are a food provider or you are cooking food, why don't you just ensure hygienic condition for the food that people eat? There's no way you eat something that, or you sell something that if you are given, then you can't eat it. So let the restaurant, the hoteliers, and people in the food manufacturing, let them do their job to ensure that we have good hygiene around the premises and even the hotels everywhere. People will just be clean and everywhere. Then we will manage part of this food safety issue. It's a big problem in the urban centers.
Dennis, you've mentioned very interesting insights on some of the main food safety issues and some of the entry points for food safety hazards. I'm just curious to know what steps are being taken to ensure food safety in the country.
Actually, our government is really doing good, and in the Constitution we have the Food, Drugs and Chemical Act that is being implemented on farmers, on the food manufacturers and food handlers. So that is part of the government, and they are really doing it very well. They go to different places and they tell people how to ensure that we have safe food, or they implement the Food, Drugs and Safety Act. Then the food industries that are implementing good manufacturing practices. Actually, in food industry, we have something called hazard analysis, critical control point. This is a way in which all the food manufacturing industries, they ensure that we have safe food. It is done all over the world. The hazard analysis critical control point is a very instrumental in industries for them to ensure that the food that is processed from their plants are safe for us. Then, of course, we have food scientists, we have nutritionists, we have NGOs and stakeholders creating awareness so that people can eat safe food. When we have food scientists and nutritionists talking to people, please can you eat safe food? People will say there's something that we need to do. So when you educate the masses, then they'll be very aware, and they'll try to ensure that the food that they eat is safe. Even their houses, their homes, they'll ensure that the food that they prepare is clean and safe for their health. Then, of course, the government is also trying, when you look at the food spoilage, the government has enhanced the transportation such that food is not wasted and foods are not deteriorating microbiologically because of transportation. Let's say when there is no road and food is coming from the village to Nairobi, and there is no road, that means there will be spoilage or an attack by the bacteria and other viruses. So in such cases, when we have a good road network, then the food spoilage will be minimized. Of course, we have the good storage system. By this, very important. Like if you don't have good storage system and the place where you process the food is dirty, that would mean that the food will be contaminated. By the government having good storage system and good water flowing, that means food that we produce is safe for our health. And of course, access to electricity in the government. Having electricity in Kenya is around up to 85% as per now. That means that we can have a refrigerator, freezers for storing food so that they don't go bad easily. So those are some of the steps that the government is taking. So we are in upward trajectory, but it also needs individual effort to make sure that you eat safe food.
Yeah, that's very interesting. How about cafes, cabs? Because I know they also play a big role when it comes to food safety.
Yes, the cafes, cabs and pest control PCPB, they do a lot, and they ensure the standards are there. They do the inspection of the quality of, like the cab, they do the standardization
of processed foods.
Even the imported ones, they put that mark of quality. So government through the cabs, cafes, PCPB, they do a lot of work to ensure that we have our safe food. But what we can say is that let them do more, because it's not yet sufficient. We have seen some loopholes there where food reaches the market and there's a public complaint. I think there was if we could see on our media, people are complaining of sugar that is already expired in our country. Now you have to ask cabs, how did it go there? Do we have the quality assurance people, quality control people? Did they see it there? Or did they handle it? Did they certify it? So with all this, we need to just do more steps on it and ensure that we eat safe food.
Yeah, thank you actually for mentioning that. And I also, probably just to add on that, also pesticide residue. We've also been able to see a few reports, even by Root to Food Initiative, by Kenya Organic Association Network, whereby they did a study and they revealed that some of the vegetables, I really don't have the statistics, but some of the vegetables had pesticide residue. They had exceeded the MRLs.
Yes.
Yeah, which is very, very problematic. And Daktari, now that you've mentioned all the steps that the government has taken, but still the concerns around food safety still exist, can we blame it on the lack of coordination among all the government entities?
We can say it is a multidisciplinary in a way that even citizens are also responsible. The government is doing their part, though not sufficiently, but let them up their game. And in most cases, it is the citizen that start this. Like when they notice something, let them be the whistleblowers who will make sure, or they tell the people that there's something we are not sure within this food. And the media has a bigger role to play on that. And in most cases, the implementation part of it is the problem, where the KEBS might be there, they have done everything, but you find some people or some food manufacturers still finding a loophole of bringing about expired products or expired food products into our system. So we also blame the police bribery and of course corruption. Yes.
Yeah, very interesting. Now that you've mentioned all of that, I've been able at least to pick some of the successes that have been done by the government, some of the challenges and some of the gaps. But from a food scientist perspective, what are some of the successes you've been able to see? And basically the successes and the gaps.
The gaps are there. Like corruption is first of them, that I can say. Then KEBS and the guys in charge of pest control and the KEFIs, they're not up to their task. Like when something happened, then you have the knee-jerk reaction. That's when you see them acting. But after that, after the public is gone silent, then you no longer hear from them. Then lack of awareness is a big problem. When people are just eating food and they're not aware that this food is toxic, then there's a big problem. So lack of awareness, that's why it is good that we have the Root to Food who are now doing something good to enlighten the masses that is how to eat safe food. Then, of course, sanitation is a problem. Yes, we may be willing to have that good food, but what is the sanitation around the environment? Like, is the environment you're preparing the food is clean? So the government has the task to make sure that the area that food is being served is clean, provision of sanitary toilets, and a good sewerage system and good flowing water. So when these are implemented, then at least we can improve on that. Those are the gaps that I see to be there. And the biggest one is, I think citizens have to be alert that what am I eating? I must know what I'm eating. If we can do that, then the government will say, my citizens are not happy with whatever they are eating. Then they will implement some of these things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, the level of awareness seems to be like a big factor.
Yes.
Yeah. Consumer Grassroots Association, CGA, they did a survey last year in 3 counties. That's Nairobi, Kajiado, and Kirinyaga. The results of the survey indicated that most consumers were actually concerned about the safety of their food, with 55% indicating that they were very worried about the current food situation. 33% were slightly worried and 12% were not worried at all, which shows the level of concern amongst consumers translating to about 9 out of 10 consumers expressing concern. That's really good. The major food safety concerns as identified by the consumers were pesticides use and misuse. That's 87%. Lack of proper sanitation at the market, you've mentioned it, 60%. And contamination during transportation, that's 37%. And lastly, contamination during preparation, 30%. In light of that, what do you think is the level? Actually, the level of awareness seems to be very high. Very high.
And that is really commendable. And I think Kenyans are becoming enlightened, and that is a positive progress. I mean, that's good for our country. And what we can do better after the awareness. Now, what the step to mitigate these ones here? Because you might be aware, but as you're aware, you're eating bad food, but there's nothing you're doing about it. So there's no big result. Now, when it comes to the pesticides, the herbicides, we have also business people who trade, or people who do trade in pesticides and herbicides. I wish we could have an independent body doing another research on this, such that the result that is taken or obtained from PCPB is not the one, because they can say, based on our climate, by the way, they have been saying that based on the climatic conditions.
Yeah.
There was an article on I think it was Business Daily, they were saying that we could lose a lot of money when we ban these pesticides, owing to the fact that we are in tropicals, where we have prevalence of some pests and others. So there's a way they can twist it in a way that if you only rely on PCPB, then we might not implement it. Or the doctors, the data can be doctored. That one is there. So in most cases, what you can say, let also other independent bodies, researchers do theirs. Then we compare, because we have seen in this country sometimes the data comes out and it contradicts the one that is known worldwide. So apart from us relying on the PCPB, I wish if could have scientists also doing independent research on this, so that we corroborate with the one that is in the European Union, because they are banning those pesticides, and it's a serious issue in those countries. But here we try to make it work, but it dies natural death. That should not be happening. As a food scientist, I'm really worried on the food I'm eating. I might be eating healthily, but along the food chain, there's something wrong there.
Yeah.
How did it start? Did the farmer follow the good agricultural practices? So that's a very, very big problem. Then public health officers, let them be strict on whatever they do, because we have seen they come around. You find maybe there's a plant manufacturing food manufacturing plant. They don't have the hygiene. The area is not in good sanitation. The hotels are not in good conditions. Maybe there are no toilets, there are no water flowing. Actually, in a place where we produce food, there must be constant flow of water. Then there's good sanitation around it. But you find that these health officers, instead of implementing this, maybe they take something, then they go away. So that's the problem that if we can fix, then we can really have a good trajectory on food safety. Then, of course, food industries are supposed to implement the good manufacturing practices through hazard analysis, control, critical point. Those are some of the things that guide the food industries on whatever they are supposed to do. Then agricultural industry stakeholders, they're supposed to know. We have the agronomists, we have the extension officers. Let them do their work. Actually, when these people do their work, the agronomists, the extension officers will not be having a problem where there's a problem from when the food was grown to where it is eaten. When you have agronomists doing his part very well, field extension officers teaching people on the best ways, on the mode of applying these things, the duration and everything, all aspects of making food to be safe. If you can have all these stakeholders doing their work, then we can have really good food or safe food in our country.
What you've mentioned is really, really, really important. And at the beginning, even just in the middle of the conversation, you kept on saying, as citizens, we also have a very, very important role when it comes to food safety.
Very, very important role.
So what I know, most of our listeners are asking themselves, yes, we have a critical role, but what role is this that we can play individually or as a community in addressing food safety issues?
It starts with you, like just like they say, security starts with you. The first thing, if maybe you are preparing your food, do you know how to handle your food in a clean environment? Let's say, like you have bought some meat and some vegetables. Are you aware they are not supposed to mix them? Because you can know some microbe can be transferred from the meat to the vegetables. So the moment you are aware of that, then most likely you'll be very, very vigilant on how to handle the food. So the first thing that we should do is for the public or the citizens to know that the food safety starts with me. I'm supposed to handle the food in a hygienic manner. Then the second one is you can also be a whistleblower. Like when something is wrong, then you have to say it. Like when you see somebody selling you food, but it is a dirty environment. Felisa, do you have a role to do to say something on that? Yes, you can say. You can say, yes, I'm buying this food, but my dear sister, the environment is not good, or it is under poor sanitation. So next time, clean the environment and make sure that the place is very, very clean, so that I have confidence. And of course, you tell him or her, the environment can transfer microbes from the environment to the food. You know that even preparing food in a dirty environment or polluted air, we have microbes around the air. They can settle on the food. What we need to do as a citizen, as a community, ensure that we are there to the food safety, and let's be hygienic in everything that we do. Then, of course, food professionals like food scientists, nutritionists, and organizations like Root to Food. You have to tell people and create awareness, sensitize people that you need to eat safe food for good health. Then, of course, help the government to implement this. Don't just say it is only the work of the government to do what? To implement the food safety. Talk to people and they'll hear you. Then maintain good hygiene, just like I've said, and ensure that your food is well stored at the right temperatures. By the right temperature is very, very important. Do you know there are some foods that if you don't keep them at the right temperature, then you have microbes that will invade it. Like you have some, especially the meat products. Once you cook them, you have to refrigerate them at specific temperatures. Leaving meat products at room temperature when it is cooked can give rise to some of the toxic bacteria in them.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So some of the things that you should do, get good information on food storage so that you don't have food poisoning. We have seen cases of food poisoning, by the way. You have had so many cases. Somebody was just okay. He ate this, then after that, then food poisoning. Some of them, maybe the food was not bad, but the temperature has made the microbes to what? To grow. And when microbes are there, when you eat them, they'll invade your gut and they'll make you sick. So in most cases, what we can say, learn food safety, about food storage, and learn how to keep your home safe and hygienic. And we'll be making a good progress towards food safety in Kenya.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very, very, very interesting. Yeah, we are now wrapping our show.
Yes.
And this is the time for your parting shots.
What I can say, as a food scientist, I'm really concerned about the food safety in Kenya. And when we see people are concerned about food safety, there's something. Where there's smoke, there's fire. In most cases, when I see that researchers have done their part and they have banned pesticides and herbicides that are detrimental or carcinogenic to our health, then we are in the same world. We can say the pesticide can also affect only those people, but not us. So when we have the research, we have scientists, they have done the research, they have said some of these pesticides that are still being used in developing countries, so that's what I can say, they are bad for their health. So when the research is there, let the government and the concerned bodies implement that and ban these pesticides. Then there's something that is really worrying this country. Like we have professionals, scientists in Kenya, they're silent, they're not doing anything. Right now I'm a food scientist and I know that's my work, to make sure that people eat well, people eat healthy. Now, as a food scientist, the food is produced in food chain. If agronomists, if externals, the agricultural external people are silent, then we are not going to make it work. We have environmentalists. By the way, when it comes to environment, there's a very, very big problem in the environment. The soil is polluted, the water is polluted, and the air is polluted. Now, when you grow food in a polluted environment, then you will not have a safe food to eat. So let all scientists come together and voice the concerns about food safety. Let's petition the government. Let's even come together and say our environment is bad for our food safety. Our water is not good. Our air is polluted. When we have this voice, then the government will say there's something here that's happening. Then they'll mitigate about it. But the silence of scientists is really worrying in this country. And I wish people would come out, people who are learned about it, the professionals in nutrition, food science, medical experts, environmentalists, farmers. If we come together and voice that there's a concern on food safety, then I think we can move on as one in this country. Thank you very much. Thank
you so much, Dr. Dennis Ouma. This has been a very, very insightful conversation, and I really like how passionate, how aggressive, basically how you're doing your work.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we've now come to the end of the show, and thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in until the end of the show. If you enjoyed the show or if you enjoyed this episode, like, share, and subscribe, and also leave a comment. Thank you. Until next time. Bye-bye.